Chapter 17. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy notes that Disaster Area, a plutonium rock band from the Gagrakia mine zones, are generally held to be not only the loudest rock band in the galaxy, but in fact the loudest noise of any kind at all. Regular concert goers judge that the best sound balance is usually to be heard from within large concrete bunkers some 37 miles from the stage, while the musicians themselves play their instruments by remote control from within a heavily insulated spaceship which stays in orbit around the planet, or, more frequently, around a completely different planet. Their songs are on the whole very simple and mostly follow the familiar theme of boy being meets girl being beneath a silvery moon, which then explodes for no adequately explored reason. Many worlds have now banned their act altogether, sometimes for artistic reasons, but most commonly because the band's public address system contravenes local strategic arms limitations treaties. This has not, however, stopped their earnings from pushing back the boundaries of pure hypermathematics, and their chief research accountant has recently been appointed professor of neo-mathematics at the University of Maxima Golan, in recognition of both his general and special theories of disaster area tax returns, in which he proves that the whole fabric of the space-time continuum is not merely curved, it is in fact totally bent. Ford staggered back to the table where Zaphod, Arthur, and Trillian were sitting waiting for the fun to begin. "Gotta have some food," said Ford. "Hi, Ford," said Zaphod. "You speak to the big noise boy?" Ford waggled his head non-committally. "Hot Black? I sort of spoke to him, yeah." "What'd he say?" "Well, not a lot, really. Yeah? He's spending a year dead for tax reasons. I've got to sit down." He sat down. The waiter approached. "Would you like to see the menu?" he said. "Or would you like to meet the dish of the day?" "Huh?" said Ford. "Huh?" said Arthur. "Huh?" said Trillian. "That's cool," said Zaphod. "We'll meet the meat." In a small room in one of the arms of the restaurant complex, a tall, thin, gangling figure pulled aside a curtain, and oblivion looked him in the face. It was not a pretty face, perhaps because oblivion had looked him in it so many times. It was too long for a start, the eyes too sunken and hooded, the cheeks too hollow, his lips were too thin and too long. When they parted, his teeth looked too much like a recently polished bay window. The hands that held the curtain were long and thin too. They were also cold. They lay lightly along the folds of the curtain and gave the impression that if he didn't watch them like a hawk, they would crawl away of their own accord and do something unspeakable in a corner. He let the curtain drop, and the terrible light that had played on his features went off to play someplace more healthy. He prowled around his small chamber like a mantis contemplating an evening's praying. Finally sat Ding on a rickety chair at a trestle table, where he leafed through a few sheets of jokes. A bell rang. He pushed the thin sheaf of papers aside and stood up. His hands brushed limply over some of the 1,000,000 rainbow-colored sequins with which his jacket was festooned, and he was gone through the door. In the restaurant, the lights dimmed, the band quickened its pace. A single spotlight stabbed down into the darkness of the stairway that led up to the center of the stage. Up the stairs bounded a tall, brilliantly colored figure. He burst onto the stage, tripped lightly up to the microphone, removed it from its stand with one swoop of his long, thin hand, and stood for a moment bowing left and right to the audience, acknowledging their applause and displaying to them his bay window. He waved to his particular friends in the audience, even though there weren't any there, and waited for the applause to die down. He held up his hand and smiled a smile that stretched not merely from ear to ear, but seemed to extend some way beyond the mere confines of his face. "Thank you, ladies and gentlemen," he cried. "Thank you very much. Thank you so much." He eyed them with a twinkling eye. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "the universe as we know it has now been in existence for over 170,000 million billion years and will be ending in a little over half an hour. So welcome one and all to Milliways, the restaurant at the end of the universe." With a gesture, he deftly conjured another round of spontaneous applause. With another gesture, he cut it. "I am your host for tonight," he said. "My name is Max Quadrupline." Everyone knew this. His act was famous throughout the known galaxy, but he said it for the fresh applause it generated, which he acknowledged with a disclaiming smile and wave. "And I've just come straight from the very other end of time, where I've been hosting a show at the Big Bang Burger Bar. or I can tell you we had a very exciting evening, ladies and gentlemen, and I will be with you tonight, right through this historic occasion, the end of history itself. Another burst of applause died away quickly as the lights dimmed down further. On every table, candles ignited themselves spontaneously, eliciting a slight gasp from all the diners and wreathing them in 1,000 tiny flickering lights and a million intimate shadows. A tremor of excitement thrilled through the darkened restaurant as the vast golden dome above them began very, very slowly to dim, to darken, to fade. Max's voice was hushed as he continued. "So, ladies and gentlemen," he breathed, "the candles are lit, the band plays softly, and as the force-shielded dome above us fades into transparency, revealing a dark and sullen sky hung heavy with the ancient light of livid, swollen stars, I can see we're all in for a fabulous evening's apocalypse." Even the soft tootling of the band faded away as a stunned shock descended on all those who had not seen this sight before. A monstrous, grisly light poured in on them, a hideous light, a boiling, pestilential light, a light that would have disfigured hell. The universe was coming to an end. For a few interminable seconds, the restaurant spun slightly through the raging void. Then Max spoke again. "For those of you who ever hope to see the light at the end of the tunnel," he said, "this is it." The band struck up again. "Thank you, ladies and gentlemen," cried Max. "I'll be back with you again in just a moment. Meanwhile, I leave you in the very capable hands of Mr. Reg Nullify and his cataclysmic combo. Big hand, please, ladies and gentlemen, for Reg and the boys." The baleful turmoil of the skies continued. Hesitantly, the audience began to clap, and after a moment or so, normal conversation resumed. Max began his round of the tables, swapping jokes, shouting with laughter, earning his living. A large dairy animal approached Zaphod Beeblebrox's table, a large, fatty, meaty quadruped of the bovine type, with large, watery eyes, small horns, and what might have almost been an ingratiating smile on its lips. "Good evening," it lowed and sat back heavily on its haunches. "I am the main dish of the day. May I interest you in parts of my body?" It harumphed and gurgled a bit, wriggled its hindquarters into a more comfortable position, and gazed peacefully at them. Its gaze was met by looks of startled bewilderment from Arthur and Trillian, a resigned shrug from Ford Prefect, and naked hunger from Zaphod Beeblebrox. "Something off the shoulder, perhaps?" suggested the animal, braised in white wine sauce. "Are your shoulder?" said Arthur in a horrified whisper. "But naturally my shoulder, sir," mooed the animal contentedly. "Nobody else's is mine to offer." Zaphod leapt to his feet and started prodding the animal's shoulder appreciatively. "Oh, the rump is very good," murmured the animal. "I've been exercising it and eating plenty of grain, so there is a lot of good meat there." It gave a mellow grunt, gurgled again, and started to chew the cud. It swallowed the cud again. "Or a casserole of meat, perhaps?" it added. "You mean this animal actually wants us to eat it?" whispered Trillian to Ford. "Me?" said Ford with a glazed look in his eyes. "I don't mean anything." "That's absolutely horrible," exclaimed Arthur. "The most revolting thing I've ever heard." "What's the problem, Earthman?" said Zaphod, now transferring his attention to the animal's enormous rump. "I just don't want to eat an animal that's standing there inviting me to," said Arthur. "It's heartless." "Better than eating an animal that doesn't want to be eaten," said Zaphod. "That's not the point," Arthur protested, and then he thought about it for a moment. "All right," he said, "maybe it is the point. I don't care. I'm not going to think about it now. The universe raged about him in its death throes. "I think I'll just have a green salad," he muttered. "May I urge you to consider my liver?" asked the animal. "It must be very rich and tender by now. I've been force-feeding myself for months." "A green salad," said Arthur emphatically. "A green salad?" said the animal, rolling his eyes disapprovingly at Arthur. "Are you going to tell me," said Arthur, "that I shouldn't have a green salad?" "Well," said the animal, "I know many vegetables that are very clear on that point, which is why it was eventually decided to cut through the whole tangled problem and breed an animal that actually wanted to be eaten and was capable of saying so clearly and distinctly. And here I am." He managed a very slight bow. Glass of water, please, said Arthur. Look, said Zaphod, we want to eat. We don't want to make a meal of the issues. 4 rare steaks, please, and hurry. We haven't eaten in 576,000 million years. The animal staggered to its feet, but gave a mellow gurgle. A very wise choice, sir, if I may say so. Very good, it said. I'll just nip off and shoot myself. He turned and gave a friendly wink to Arthur. Don't worry, sir. I'll be very humane. It waddled unhurriedly off to the kitchen. A matter of minutes later, the waiter arrived with 4 huge steaming steaks. Zaphod and Ford wolfed straight into them without a second's hesitation. Trillian paused, then shrugged and started into hers. Hey, Earthman, said Zaphod with a malicious grin on the face that wasn't stuffing itself. What's eating you? And the band played on. All around the restaurant, people and things relaxed and chatted. The air was filled with talk of this and that, the mingled scents of exotic plants, extravagant foods, and insidious wines. For an infinite number of miles in every direction, the universal cataclysm was gathering to a stupefying climax. Glancing at his watch, Max returned to the stage with a flourish. And now, ladies and gentlemen, he beamed, is everyone having one last wonderful time? Yes, called out the sort of people who call out yes when comedians ask if they're having a good time. That's wonderful, enthused Max, absolutely wonderful. And as the photon storms gather in the swirling crowds around us, preparing to tear apart the very last of the red-hot suns, I know you are all going to settle back and enjoy with me what I know we will all find an immensely exciting and terminal experience. He paused. He caught the audience with a glittering eye. Believe me, ladies and gentlemen, there is nothing penultimate about this one. He paused again. Tonight his timing was immaculate. Time after time he had done this show, night after night. Not that the word night had any meaning here at the extremity of time. All there was the endless repetition of the final moment, as the restaurant rocked slowly forward over the brink of time's farthest edge and back again. This night was good, though. The audience was writhing in the palm of his sickly hand. His voice dropped. They had to strain to hear him. This, he said, really is the absolute end, the final chilling desolation in which the whole majestic sweep of creation becomes extinct. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the proverbial it. He dropped his voice still lower. In the stillness, a fly would not have dared clear its throat. After this, he said, there is nothing. Void, emptiness, oblivion, absolutely nothing. His eyes glittered again, or did they twinkle? Nothing, except, of course, for the desserts and a fine selection of liquors. Excuse me. The band gave him a music sting. He wished they wouldn't. He didn't need it. Not an artist of his caliber. He could play the audience like his own musical instrument. They were laughing with relief. He followed on. And for once, he cried cheerily, you don't need to worry about having a hangover in the morning, because there won't be any mornings. He beamed at his happy, laughing audience. He glanced up at the sky, going through the same death routine every night, but his glance was only for a fraction of a second. He trusted it to do its job, as one professional trusts another. And now, he said, strutting about the stage, at the risk of putting a damper on the wonderful sense of doom and futility here this evening, I would like to welcome a few parties. He pulled a card from his pocket. He put up a hand to hold back the cheers. Do we have a party here from the Zanskal Quadra Flammarion Bridge Club from beyond the gorgewood of the barn? Are they here? A rousing cheer came from the back, but he pretended not to hear. He peered around trying to find them. Are they here? He asked again, to elicit a louder cheer. He got it, as he always did. Ah, there they are. Well, last bids, lads. No cheating. Remember, this is a very solemn moment. He lapped up the laughter. Also, do we have a party of minor deities from the halls of Asgard? Away to his right came a rumble of thunder. Lightning arced across the stage. A small group of hairy men with helmets sat looking very pleased with themselves and raised their glasses to him. Has-beens, he thought to himself. Careful with that hammer, sir, he said. They did their trick with the lightning again. Max gave them a very thin-lipped smile. And thirdly, he said, a party of young conservatives from Sirius B. Are they here? A party of smartly dressed young dogs stopped throwing rolls at each other and started throwing rolls at the stage. They yapped and barked unintelligibly. Yes, said Max. Well, this is all your fault. You realize that? And finally, said Max, quieting the audience down and putting on his solemn face, finally, I believe we have here with us a party of believers, very devout believers, from the Church of the Second Coming of the great prophet Zarquan. There were about 20 of them, sitting right out on the edge of the floor, aesthetically dressed, sipping mineral water nervously and staying apart from the festivities. They blinked resentfully as the spotlight was turned on them. There they are, said Max, sitting there patiently. He said he'd come again, and he's kept you waiting for a long time. So let's hope he's hurrying, fellas, because he's only got 8 minutes left. The party of Zarquan's followers sat rigid, refusing to be buffeted by the waves of uncharitable laughter which swept over them. Max restrained his audience. No, but seriously, folks, seriously, no offense meant. No, I know we shouldn't make fun of deeply held beliefs. So I think a big hand, please, for the great prophet Zarquan. The audience clapped respectfully. Wherever he's gone to. He blew a kiss to the stony-faced party and returned to the center of the stage. He grabbed a tall stool and sat on it. It's marvelous, though, to see so many of you here tonight. Isn't it, though? Yes, absolutely marvelous. Because I know that so many of you come here time and time again, which I think is really wonderful. To come and watch this final end of everything, then return home to your own eras, raise families, strive for new and better societies, fight terrible wars for what you know to be right. It really gives one hope for the future of all life kind. Except, of course, he waved at the blitzing turmoil above and around them, that we know it hasn't got one. Arthur turned to Ford. He hadn't quite got this place worked out in his mind. Look, surely, he said, if the universe is about to end, don't we go with it? Ford gave him a 3-pan-galactic gargle blaster look. In other words, a rather unsteady one. No, he said. Look, he said, as soon as you come into this dive, you get held in this sort of amazing force-shielded temporal warp thing, I think. Oh, said Arthur. He turned his attention back to the bowl of soup he managed to get from the waiter to replace his steak. Look, said Ford, I'll show you. He grabbed a napkin off the table and fumbled hopelessly with it. Look, he said, imagine this napkin, right, as the temporal universe, right? And the spoon is a transductional mode in the matter curve. It took him a while to say this last part, and Arthur hated to interrupt him. That's the spoon I was eating with, he said. All right, said Ford. Imagine this spoon. Found a small wooden spoon on a tray of relishes. I went one page too far. But he found it rather tricky to pick up. No, better still, this fork. Hey, would you let go of my fork? Snapped Zaphod. All right, said Ford. All right. Why don't we say this wine glass is the temporal universe? The one you just knocked on the floor? Did I do that? Yes. All right, said Ford. Forget that. I mean, look, do you know how the universe actually began for a kickoff? Probably not, said Arthur, who wished he'd never embarked on any of this. All right, said Ford. Imagine this. Right. You get this bath. Right. A large round bath, and it's made of ebony. Where from? Said Arthur. Herod's was destroyed by the Bogons. Doesn't matter. So you keep saying. Listen. All right. You get this bath, see? Imagine you've got this bath, and it's ebony, and it's conical. Conical? Said Arthur. What sort of? Shh, said Ford. It's conical. So what you do is, you see, you fill it with fine white sand, all right? Or sugar. Fine white sand and or sugar. Anything, doesn't matter. Sugar's fine. When it's full, you pull the plug out. Are you listening? I'm listening. You pull the plug out, and it all just twirls away. Twirls away, you see, out of the plug hole. I see. You don't see. You don't see it all. I haven't got to the clever bit yet. You want to hear the clever bit? Tell me the clever bit. I'll tell you the clever bit. Ford thought for a moment, trying to remember what the clever bit was. The clever bit, he said, is this. You film it happening. Clever, agreed Arthur. You get a movie camera and you film it happening. Clever. That's not the clever bit. This is the clever bit. I remember now that this is the clever bit. Clever bit is that you then thread the film in the projector backward. Backward? Yes, threading it backward is definitely the clever bit. So then you just sit and watch it, and everything just appears to spiral upward out of the plug hole and fill the bath. See? And that's how the universe began, is it? Said Arthur. No, said Ford, but it's a marvelous way to relax. He reached for his wine glass. Where's my wine glass? He said. It's on the floor. Ah. Tipping back his chair to look for it, Ford collided with the small green waiter who was approaching the table carrying a portable telephone. Ford excused himself to the waiter, explaining that it was because he was extremely drunk. The waiter said that it was quite all right and that he perfectly understood. Ford thanked the waiter for his kind indulgence, attempted to tuck his forelock, missed by 6 inches, and slid under the table. Mr. Zaphod Beeblebrox? Inquired the waiter. Yeah, said Zaphod, glancing up from his third steak. There's a phone call for you. A what? A phone call, sir. For me? Here? Hey, but no, who knows where I am? One of his minds raced. The other dawdled lovingly over the food it was still shoveling in. Excuse me if I carry on, won't you? Said his eating head and carried on. There were now so many people after him that he'd lost count. He shouldn't have made such a conspicuous entrance. Hell, why not, though, he thought. How do you know you're having fun if there's no one watching you have it? Maybe someone here tipped off the Galactic Police, said Trillian. Everyone saw you come in. You mean they want to arrest me over the phone, said Zaphod. Could be. I'm a pretty dangerous dude when I'm cornered. Yeah, said a voice under the table. You go to pieces so fast that people get hit by the shrapnel. Hey, what is this, Judgment Day? Snapped Zaphod. Do we get to see that as well? Asked Arthur nervously. I'm in no hurry, muttered Zaphod. Okay, who's the cat on the phone? He kicked Ford. Hey, get up in there, kid, he said to him. I may need you. I am not, said the waiter, personally acquainted with the metal gentleman in question, sir. Metal? Yes, sir. Did you say metal? Yes, sir. I said that I am not personally acquainted with the metal gentleman in question. Okay, carry on. But I am informed that he has been waiting for your return a considerable number of millennia. It seems you left here somewhat precipitately. Left here, said Zaphod? Are you being strange? We only just arrived here. Indeed, sir, persisted the waiter doggedly, but before you arrived here, sir, I understand that you left here. Zaphod tried this one in one brain and then in the other. You're saying, he said, that before we arrived here, we left here? This is going to be a long night, thought the waiter. Precisely, sir, he said. Put your analyst on danger money, baby. No, wait a minute, said Ford, emerging above the table level again. Where exactly is here? To be absolutely exact, sir, it is Frogstar World B. But we just left there, protested Zaphod. We left there and came to the restaurant at the end of the universe. Yes, sir, said the waiter, feeling he was now into the home stretch and running well. The one was constructed on the ruins of the other. Oh, said Arthur brightly, you mean we've traveled in time but not in space? Listen, you semi-evolved simian, cut in Zaphod, go climb a tree, will you? Arthur bristled. Go bang your heads together, Four Eyes, he advised Zaphod. No, the waiter said to Zaphod, your monkey has got it right, sir. Arthur stuttered in fury and said nothing opposite, or indeed coherent. He jumped forward, I believe, 576,000 million years while staying exactly in the same place, explained the waiter. He smiled. He had a wonderful feeling that he had finally won, though against what seemed to be insuperable odds. That's it, said Zaphod. I got it. I told the computer to send us to the nearest place to eat, and that's exactly what it did. Give or take 576,000 million years or whatever. We never moved. Neat. They all agreed that this was very neat. But who, said Zaphod, is the cat on the phone? Whatever happened to Marvin, said Trillian. Zaphod clapped his hands to his head. The paranoid android! I left him moping about on Frogstar World B. When was this? Well, 576,000 million years ago, I suppose, said Zaphod. Here, hand me the wrap rod, plate captain. The little waiter's eyebrows wandered about his forehead in confusion. I beg your pardon, sir, he said. The phone, waiter, said Zaphod, grabbing it off him. Gee, you guys are so unhip, it's a wonder your bums don't fall off. Indeed, sir. Hey, Marvin, is that you? Said Zaphod into the phone. How you doing, kid? There was a long pause before a thin, low voice came up the line. Zaphod cupped his hand over the phone. It's Marvin, he said. Hey, Marvin, he said into the phone again. We're having a great time. Food, wine, a little personal abuse, and the universe going boom. Where can we find you? Again the pause. You don't have to pretend to be interested in me, you know, said Marvin at last. I know perfectly well I'm only a menial robot. Okay, said Zaphod, but where are you? Reverse primary thrust, Marvin. That's what they say to me. Open airlock number 3, Marvin. Marvin, can you pick up that piece of paper? Can I pick up that piece of paper? Here I am, a brain the size of a planet, and they ask me to... Yeah, sympathized Zaphod hardly at all. But I'm quite used to being humiliated, droned Marvin. I can even go and stick my head in a bucket of water if you like. Would you like me to go and stick my head in a bucket of water? I've got one ready. Wait a minute. Hey, Marvin, interrupted Zaphod, but it was too late. Sad little clunks and gurgles came up the line. What's he saying? Asked Trillian. Nothing, said Zaphod. He just phoned up to wash his head at us. There, said Marvin, coming back on the line and bubbling a bit. I hope that gave satisfaction. Yeah, said Zaphod. Now will you please tell us where you are? I'm in the parking lot, said Marvin. The parking lot? What are you doing there? Parking cars. What else does one do in a parking lot? Okay, hang in there. We'll be right down. In one movement, Zaphod leaped to his feet, threw down the phone, and wrote Hot Black Desiato on the bill. Come on, guys, he said. Marvin's in the parking lot. Let's get on down. What's he doing in the parking lot? Asked Arthur. Parking cars. What else, dum-dum? But what about the end of the universe? We'll miss the big moment. I've seen it. It's rubbish. Nothing but a Gnav gib. What? Opposite of a Big Bang. Come on, let's get zappy. A few of the other diners paid them any attention as they weaved their way through the restaurant to the exit. Their eyes were riveted on the horror of the skies. An interesting effect to watch for, Max was telling them, is the upper left-hand quadrant of the sky, where, if you look very carefully, you can see the star system, Hastromil, boiling away into the ultraviolet. Anyone here from Hastromil? There were one or two slightly hesitant cheers from somewhere at the back. Well, said Max, beaming cheerfully at them, it's too late to worry about whether or not you left the gas on now. I'm just going to check how long this next one is. That was a long chapter. The next one is also fairly long, 6 pages. Should we keep going or should we stop? Go. Chapter 18. The main reception foyer was almost empty, but Ford nevertheless weaved his way through it. Zaphod grasped him firmly by the arm and maneuvered him into a cubicle, standing to one side of the entrance hall. What are you doing to him? Asked Arthur. Sobering him up, said Zaphod, and pushed a coin into a slot. Lights flashed, gases swirled. Hi, said Ford, stepping out a moment later. Where are we going? Down to the parking lot. Come on. What about the personal time teleport? Said Ford. Get us straight back to the heart of gold. Yeah, but I've cooled on that ship. Zarny Whoop can have it. I don't want to play his games. Let's see what we can find. A Sirius Cybernetics Corporation Happy Vertical People Transporter took them down deep into the substrata beneath the restaurant. They were glad to see it had been vandalized and didn't try to make them happy as well as take them down. At the bottom of the shaft, the elevator doors opened and a blast of cold, stale air hit them. The first thing they saw on leaving the elevator was a long concrete wall with over 50 doors in it, offering laboratory facilities for all of the 50 major life forms. Nevertheless, like every parking lot in the galaxy throughout the entire history of parking lots, this parking lot smelled predominantly of impatience. They turned a corner and found themselves on a moving catwalk that traversed a vast cavernous space that stretched off into the dim distance. It was divided off into bays, each of which contained a spaceship belonging to one of the diners upstairs. Some smallish and utilitarian mass production models, others vast, shining limo ships, playthings of the very rich. Zaphod's eyes sparkled with something that may or may not have been avarice as he passed over them. In fact, it's best to be clear on this point. Avarice was definitely what it was. There he is, said Trillian. Marvin, down there. They looked where she was pointing. Dimly, they could see a small metal figure listlessly rubbing a small rag on one remote corner of a giant silver sun cruiser. At short intervals along the moving catwalk, wide transparent tubes led down to floor level. Zaphod stepped off the catwalk into one of these and floated gently downward. The others followed. Thinking back to this later, Arthur Dent thought this was the single most enjoyable experience of his travels in the galaxy. Hey, Marvin, said Zaphod, striding over toward him. Hey, kid, we pleased to see you. Marvin turned, and insofar as it is possible for a totally inert metal face to look reproachful, this is what it did. No, you're not, he said. No one ever is. Suit yourself, said Zaphod, and turned away to ogle the ships. Ford went with him. Only Trillian and Arthur actually went up to Marvin. No, we really are, said Trillian, and patted him in a way that he disliked intensely. Hanging around waiting for us all this time. 576,000 million, 3,579 years, said Marvin. I counted them. Well, here we are now, said Trillian, feeling, quite correctly in Marvin's view, that it was a slightly foolish thing to say. The first 10 million years were the worst, said Marvin, and the second 10 million years, they were the worst too. The third 10 million I didn't enjoy at all. After that, I went into a bit of a decline. He paused just long enough to make them feel they ought to say something, and then interrupted. It's the people you meet in this job that really get you down, he said and paused again. Trillian cleared her throat. Is that? The best conversation I had was over 40 million years ago, continued Marvin. Again the pause. Oh, and that was with a coffee machine. He waited. That's it. You don't like talking to me, do you? Said Marvin in a low, desolate tone. Trillian talked to Arthur instead. Farther down the chamber, Ford Prefect had found something of which he very much liked the look. Several such things, in fact. Zaphod, he said in a quiet voice, just look at some of these little star trolleys. Zaphod looked and liked. The craft they were looking at was in fact pretty small, but extraordinary and very much a rich kid's toy. It was not much to look at. It resembled nothing so much as a paper dart about 20 feet long, made of thin but tough metal foil. At the rear end was a small horizontal two-man cockpit. It had a tiny charm drive engine, which was not capable of moving it at any great speed. The thing it did have, though, was a heat sink. The heat sink had a mass of some 2,000 billion tons, was contained within a black hole mounted in an electromagnetic field situated halfway along the length of the ship. And this heat sink enabled the craft to be maneuvered to within a few miles of a yellow sun, there to catch and ride the solar flares that burst out from its surface. Flare riding is one of the most exotic and exhilarating sports in existence, and those who can dare and afford to do it are among the most lionized men in the galaxy. It is also, of course, stupefyingly dangerous. Those who don't die riding invariably die of sexual exhaustion on one of the Daedalus Club's après-flare parties. Ford and Zaphod looked and passed on. And this baby, said Ford, The tangerine star buggy with the black sunbursters? Again, the star buggy was a small ship, a totally misnamed one, in fact, because the one thing it couldn't manage was interstellar distances. Basically, it was a sporty planet hopper dolled up to look like something it wasn't. Nice lines, though. They passed on. The next one was a big one and 30 yards long. A coach limo ship and obviously designed with one aim in mind, that of making the beholder sick with envy. The paintwork and accessory detail clearly said, not only am I rich enough to afford this ship, I'm also rich enough not to take it seriously. It was wonderfully hideous. Just look at it, said Zaphod. Multi-cluster quark drive, Persplex running boards. Gotta be a Laszlo Lyricon custom job. He examined every inch. Yes, he said. Look, the infra-pink lizard emblem on the neutrino cowling. Laszlo's trademark. The man has no shame. I was passed by one of these mothers once out by the Axel Nebula, said Ford. I was going flat out and this thing just strolled past me. Star drive hardly taking over. Just incredible. Zaphod whispered appreciatively. 10 seconds later, said Ford, it smashed straight into the third moon of Jaguar Beta. Yeah, right? Amazing looking ship, though. Looks like a fish, moves like a fish, steers like a cow. Ford looked around the other side. Hey, come see, he called out. There's a big mural painted on this side. Bursting sun. Disaster area's trademark. This must be Hot Black's ship. Lucky old bugger. They do this terrible song, you know, which ends with a stunt ship crashing into the sun. Meant to be an amazing spectacle. Expensive at stunt ships, though. Zaphod's attention, however, was elsewhere. His attention was riveted on the ship standing next to Hot Black Desiato's limo. His mouth hung open. That, he said, that is really bad for the eyes. Ford looked. He too stood astonished. It was a ship of classic simple design, like a flattened salmon, 20 yards long, very clean, very sleek. There was just one remarkable thing about it. It's so black, said Ford Prefect. You can hardly make out its shape. Light just seems to fall into it. Zaphod said nothing. He had simply fallen in love. The blackness of it was so extreme that it was almost impossible to tell how close you were standing to it. Your eyes just slide off it, said Ford in wonder. It was an emotional moment. He bit his lip. Zaphod moved forward to it, slowly, like a man possessed. Or more accurately, like a man who wanted to possess. His hand reached out to stroke it. His hand stopped. His hand reached out to stroke it again. His hand stopped again. Come feel this surface, he said in a hushed voice. Ford put his hand out to feel it. His hand stopped. You can't? He said. See, said Zaphod, it's totally frictionless. This must be one mother of a mover. He turned to look at Ford seriously. At least one of his heads did. The other stayed gazing in awe at the ship. What do you reckon, Ford? He said. You mean, Ford looked over his shoulder. You mean stroll off with it? You think we should? No. Nor do I. But we're going to, aren't we? How can we not? They gazed a little longer, till Zaphod suddenly pulled himself together. We better shift soon. In a moment or so, the universe will have ended, and all the captain creeps will be pouring down here to find their Borge-mobiles. Zaphod, said Ford. Yeah? How do we do it? Simple, said Zaphod. He turned. Marvin! He called. Slowly, laboriously, and with a million little clinking and creaking noises that he had learned to simulate, Marvin turned around to answer the summons. Come over here, said Zaphod. We've got a job for you. Marvin trudged toward them. I won't enjoy it, he said. Yes, you will, enthused Zaphod. There's a whole new life stretching out ahead of you. Oh no, not another one, groaned Marvin. Will you shut up and listen? Hissed Zaphod. This time there's going to be excitement and adventure and really wild things. Sounds awful, Marvin said. Marvin, all I'm trying to ask you, I suppose you want me to open the spaceship for you. What? Yes, yeah, that's right, said Zaphod drunkly. He was keeping at least 3 eyes on the entrance. Time was short. Well, I wish you'd just tell me rather than trying to engage my enthusiasm, said Marvin, because I haven't got one. They walked on up to the ship, touched it, and a hatchway sprung open. Ford and Zaphod stared at the opening. "Don't mention it," said Marvin. "Oh, you didn't." He trudged away again. Arthur and Trillian clustered around. "What's happening?" asked Arthur. "Look at this," said Ford. "Look at the interior of this ship." "Weirder and weirder," breathed Zaphod. "It's black," said Ford. "Everything in it is just totally black." In the restaurant, things were fast approaching the moment after which there wouldn't be any more moments. All eyes were fixed on the dome, other than those of Hot Black Desiato's bodyguard, which were looking intently at Hot Black Desiato, and those of Hot Black Desiato himself, which the bodyguard had closed out of respect. The bodyguard leaned forward over the table. Had Hot Black Desiato been alive, he probably would have deemed this a good moment to lean back, or even go for a short walk. His bodyguard was not a man who improved with proximity. On account of his unfortunate condition, however, Hot Black Desiato remained completely inert. "Mr. Desiato, sir," whispered the bodyguard. Whenever he spoke, it looked as if the muscles on either side of his mouth were clambering over each other to get out of the way. "Mr. Desiato, can you hear me?" Hot Black Desiato, quite naturally, said nothing. "Hot Black," hissed the bodyguard. Again, quite naturally, Hot Black Desiato did not reply. Supernaturally, however, he did. On the table in front of him, a wine glass rattled, and the fork rose an inch or so and tapped against the glass. It settled on the table again. The bodyguard gave a satisfied grunt. "It's time we were going, Mr. Desiato," muttered the bodyguard. "Don't want to get caught in the rush, not in your condition. You want to get to the next gig nice and relaxed." There was a really big audience for it, one of the best. Kakrafoon, 576,002 million years ago. Had you been looking forward to it? The fork rose again, paused, waggled in a non-committal sort of way, and dropped again. "Ah, come on," said the bodyguard. "It's going to have been great. You knocked him cold." The bodyguard would have given Dr. Dan Street Mentioner an apoplectic attack. The black ship going into the sun always gets him, and the new one's a beauty. Be real sorry to see it go. If we get on down there, I'll set the black ship autopilot and we'll cruise off in the limo, okay? The fork tapped once in agreement. The glass of wine mysteriously emptied itself. The bodyguard wheeled Hot Black Desiato's chair out of the restaurant. "And now," cried Max from the center of the stage, "the moment you've all been waiting for." He flung his arms into the air. Behind him, the band went into a frenzy of percussion and rolling synth chords. Max had argued with them about this, but they had claimed it was in their contract, and that's what they would do. His agent would have to sort it out. "The skies begin to boil," he cried. "Nature collapses into the screaming void. In 20 seconds' time, the universe itself will be at an end. See where the light of infinity bursts in upon us." The hideous fury of destruction blazed about them, and at that moment a still small trumpet sounded as if from an infinite distance. Max's eyes swiveled around to glare at the band. None of them seemed to be playing a trumpet. Suddenly a wisp of smoke was swirling and shimmering on the stage next to him. The trumpet was joined by more trumpets. Over 500 times Max had done this show, and nothing like this had ever happened before. He drew back in alarm from the swirling smoke, and as he did so, a figure slowly materialized inside, the figure of an ancient man, bearded, robed, and wreathed in light. In his eyes were stars, and on his brow a golden crown. "What's this?" whispered Max, wild-eyed. "What's happening?" At the back of the restaurant, the stony-faced party from the church of the second coming of the great prophet Zarquan leaped ecstatically to their feet, chanting and crying. Max blinked in amazement. He threw up his arms to the audience. "A big hand, please, ladies and gentlemen, for the great prophet Zarquan! He has come! Zarquan has come again!" Thunderous applause broke out as Max strode across the stage and handed his microphone to the prophet. Zarquan coughed. He peered around at the assembled gathering. The stars in his eyes twinkled uneasily. He handled the microphone with confusion. He said, "Hello. Look, I'm sorry I'm a bit late. I had the most ghastly time, all sorts of things cropping up at the last moment." He seemed nervous of the expectant odd hush. He cleared his throat. How are we for time? Have I got just And so the universe ended.